Let's play a game, shall we? I thought I'd cheer us up with something a little bit more positive. So what this was inspired by a witty comeback from a boomer, because here we are. So it was this tweet that I saw. So basically, boomers are fed up with getting the retort "Okay, boomer" whenever they say something particularly boomerish on social media. So they thought it'd be particularly clever to come, and I do kind of admire this actually. This guy says when somebody comes at you with "Okay, boomer," just retaliate with "Okay, renter." It usually either shuts them up or sets them off. A really soft spot for millennials, knowing they will never own their own home.
Now, I'm aware of talking about counter-revolutionary groups being put in the fields. I understand that I'm currently wearing glasses, so
Yeah.
I'm slightly conscious of that. But maybe he wants to worry about antagonizing a group that are quite swayed by Marxism these days by reminding them all of the fact that the boomer are a landlord class and that they're robbing them of their cash.
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I mean, one, just the sheer chutzpah of being the generation that has basically won it all, dunking on your own children and grandchildren for the fact that the society has now been so completely screwed up, they got no prospect of owning a home like they all did. So the sheer chutzpah of that makes me laugh. Also, the fact that he still thinks that millennials are the people in their 20s. No, actually, that's the Zoomers now. But just the sheer audacity of that tweet inspired what I was going to do as basically a Brokenomics episode. But I couldn't quite justify a full Brokenomics episode out of it, so I decided to condense it down into a segment. So
well, you should do a Brokenomics at some point on why should Zoomers even bother working.
That would be a challenge. So let's have a look at house prices to sort of get to the gist of what this man was saying. So this is a chart of house prices. Goes back to, what is it? Oh, 19.
Is it worth turning dark mode off, John, for this one?
Yeah, 1952. I think it goes back to. And it's a chart of, oh, here we go. Yeah, there we go. A chart of house prices. No, it's I've zoomed out now. But anyway, so basically, it shows house prices have gone up from, what was it? So in the early 50s, about under a grand for no, it's under $2,000 for a house. Up to wherever we are now, like up near 300,000.
And that's average for the country, which means that the further you get from basically a job zone where most Zoomers can work in the knowledge economy, it gets more affordable, but you probably can't live there anyway because you can't earn any money to.
Well, I mean, it might have been £3,000 for a house in central London and only £500 for a house in, somewhere interesting. But let's not just look at that. Let's also adjust these prices for inflation. So you can't make the argument that, oh, yes, we were paid less back there. So in real terms, so in today's money, what did a house cost back then? Now, this chart is on a slightly different time scale, but all the same, it goes back to the early 70s, which makes my point quite well, which is in today's money, a house was about $100,000.
And now averages about 270.
Yes.
So it's nearly tripled.
Yeah. Something happens in the 1990s there. It's amazing.
And this only goes back to 1976. In the 50s, it would have been even lower in today's money. That's why, if you know any sort of boomers, they all bought a house age like 21, 22 on a starting salaries, a 4-bedroom house.
And then they always tell me, but it's all right, we need to pay high taxes because I need my pension and my NHS pay. Because I paid into my pension. I mean, if you look at that as a rate of inflation as well, you paid into your pension at a lower rate of inflation and are claiming at the higher rate. So my earnings are just nothing.
Well, the argument that the boomers make, you see, is that they had it hard too. No, they didn't actually. And let's look at the share of wealth. So this is actually for the US, because the US produces quite good figures on this.
We zoom out a little bit.
US and UK boomers are very different people as well, just to be sure.
In what sense? What's the key difference in your mind?
The US boomers are way richer.
Right. Yes. Well, no, actually, it's broadly similar. It's broadly similar. I mean, I think the US do have an advantage, but this sort of general picture lines up. But it's the best figures that I had. This is actually one of the charts that I showed you in that Brokenomics episode that we did together. So I drafted Callum in for an episode of Brokenomics on what is an economy even for, and your perspective, Callum, which I quite like, which was the economy was fake and gay.
Yes.
Yes, which I quite like. So anyway, this is the total amount of US assets split by generation, and as you can see, the baby boomers have got basically half of it. I mean, they've got more in say, I'll pick a category, pensions or real estate or other assets, things like bloody wine and art, than the millennials have in total.
Well, they've got more in other assets than the Gen Xers do in real estate.
Yes.
That's mental.
Yes.
Hi folks, we've rolled out a new feature on the website, which is the ability to pay for an individual piece of content. So usually it's £5 a month every month to subscribe to all of the content on the website. But I appreciate there are going to be people who simply don't want to do that. They would be interested instead in purchasing a single piece of content for a lower amount, and they've got a particular niche that they're interested in watching. And so they don't want every single piece of content. They just want this one thing. So we've introduced this function where you can just simply purchase the one thing for £1.89, which I think is about $2.30 at the current exchange rates. And then that's just yours forever. So there's no sort of commitment there. There's no rolling subscription. It's just that one thing. So that's an option now that's on the website. It's completely live. It's completely available. And please go and enjoy it.
Yes. So anyway, so this, you can go and watch the Brokenomics episode, What is an Economy Even For, if you want us to see us to drill down into this. But what I thought it might be fun to do is to basically play a game, you see. So what I thought is what we do is we get a Monopoly board,
right,
and we will have 4 players, and we will play the game to see basically how that goes. Just to put this into sort of real perspective. So we're going to need some players. So
I just love it. That's so true. It's like people can't really understand pie graphs, but we all know Monopoly.
Yes, well, that's exactly my thinking. So we need some players. So first of all, we need a boomer, and for that I have chosen Lady Graham of South Carolina. So he is going to represent the boomer team. And for those of you who are watching, I've taken this photo as he is just in the cusp of having a very special wargasm. He's probably just heard that we're bombing somewhere, and he's enjoying that. We need a Gen X player now. Obviously, with Gen X has very, very many cool people to pick from, because it is by far the coolest generation.
It's not even remotely the coolest generation.
It's the coolest generation. So difficult who to choose from. I could have picked Kurt Cobain, Elon Musk, Sargon, me.
Are these people meant to be cool?
Yes. I actually chose Joe Rogan in the end. So he's going to be playing for Team Gen X. We need a millennial. I thought Emma Watson.
I would have gone with Taylor Swift.
33 years old, childless, focusing on her career.
Again, I would have gone with Taylor Swift. Same bracket.
Well, yes, exactly. We're going to need somebody from Silent Generation, because they're still around. Now, Silent Generation is another generation that has been comprehensively shit on. If you believe generational theory, they're basically in the same cycle point as Zoomers. So they basically came at the tail end of a crisis period, which matches up. So for the Silent Generation, I've picked Johnny Cash.
Good pick.
You could also pick Joe Biden. Actually, he's a Silent Generation. He's a very young. He's at the end of the Silent Generation.
Oh, I don't know about that. He did once say that he's been in the Senate for 200 years.
Well, yeah. That would make him missionary generation or something. Who else do we need? Oh, yes, we need a Zoomer. So we need somebody who represents Zoomers. So I obviously went for the ultimate symbol of the Zoomer generation, a gender questioning influencer. So anyway.
On the money.
We've got our team ready to go in order to play this game of Monopoly and see how things turn out. So basically, what I did is I added up the value of all of the properties on the board, which comes to 5,690 if you add them all up. And then what I did is I took that chart in the middle and I divided whatever it is, 156 trillion by the value of the Monopoly board. And then I thought what I'd do is we assign properties starting at Mayfair, the purple one. It's Mayfair if you're in UK. If you're a foreigner, you have a different Monopoly board apparently, for some reason. So anyway, we're going to start at the expensive purple one, and we're going to work backwards to find out what each generation owns. So should we start with the boomers?
Unfortunately,
yeah. Let's start with the boomers to see what they get. So they get
half the board.
But thing is the first properties are really expensive.
Okay.
So you burn through a lot of capital just by going up the first side. That's actually by
the last side, because you go around that way.
Yeah, but I'm doing it in reverse.
Right, okay.
Because I don't think you should be putting boomers in old Kent Road. You know, they want the best. They want the very best. So anyway, we're starting at the best for them. And anyway, so I worked out that by the time you've taken, what is it, 7.9 trillion of private business, 18.3 trillion of real estate, 19 trillion of equities and mutual funds, 16.2 trillion of pensions, 2.9 trillion of durable goods. What's that?
What is that?
Tins of beans that they got stacked up.
It's got 2.9 trillion of beans.
Shotguns or something. And 13.8 trillion of other assets. So like wine and art and, you know, whatever else have they got sitting around.
Washing machines.
Anyway, you put that into property and there we go.
What, their wives?
The boomers are off to a pretty strong start. They've got both the purple ones, they've got all of the green ones, they've got all of the yellow ones, and they've got the
one
best
of the red ones and the utilities.
Oh yes, I had to give them the waterworks as well, just to.
That explains why the reservoirs haven't expanded capacity in quite some time as well.
Yes, no new reservoirs in the UK since 1991.
Build your own reservoir, Snowflake.
Even with that disproportionality of the deep blue ones being so expensive, you actually do almost get half the board anyway.
Yes. Yeah, it's a strong position. I say they're entering the game strong. What about Gen X? And also, I should point out, by the way, for any boomers watching, we're going to say, "Oh, we know it's just because we're old and we've accumulated assets." If I was doing this as a proper Brokenomics episode, as opposed to a quick segment, I would actually have gone back and done this at equal points in history for the silent generation or previous gen. No, that's actually not the case. So the boomers were, if you were to do this when the boomers were in their 30s, it would not look like it would for the millennials.
And it's not, if you wargamed it out to how much the Zoomers are going to owe when they get to the equivalent boomer age, going to look like this at all either.
Yeah, I mean, it's not entirely the boomers' fault. Basically, what happened is they were the largest generation that the planet's ever seen. I mean, not in absolute terms. There's slightly more absolute number of millennials than there are boomers, but in relative terms, they're the biggest generation the world has ever seen. And they came into the workforce, and they basically created demand as they went. So that old thing is like, you might assume that it's better to be part of a small generation rather than a large generation. That's actually wrong. You're better off being part of a large generation because that creates its own demand as it goes. The other thing, of course, is that 1971, the America and the world basically went off a gold standard that meant money just started expanding. So if you bought a house, basically the value of a house just rocketed.
Two quick questions.
Yes.
Who voted for all the entitlement programs?
Well, yes, that was the boomers. And also, not only that, it was the boomer generation that basically put those entitlements in place. Now, they had it, they started doing it for good reason. They started doing it because silent generation, we've got represented one of the players on the board there, were really poor. So in the 80s, if you wanted to do a social program for poor people, the easiest way to do it was just to make it for old people, because they were basically the same thing.
They've been through 2 world wars and the Great Depression. We owe them something. Yeah,
exactly. Well, exactly. So, so they were doing a favor for the greatest generation and the silent generation.
The problem is social programs never work as intended.
Well, no, it's not just that. It's they started being generous. There was lots of them being generous to a small number of people, because there weren't many greatest generation. There weren't many silent generation. They started being generous to them. And that explains the social programs in the early 80s. By the late 80s, they'd started to look at these and think, we're going to get old one day. Maybe we should start,
voting ourselves money.
Yeah.
The other
gold plating this a bit.
The other problem as well. The second question. Great, large generation. Large generation wants lots of things.
Yes.
Who's going to pay for that? Oh, large generation didn't want many kids because they wanted to smoke dope in Woodstock, so birth rate goes down. So then import infinity foreigners in order to pay for our pensions.
Well, yes, there is that as well. But
so I'm not a big fan of the whole generational fight thing, because it gets personal when it doesn't make any sense to get personal, Yes. So that I just don't like that aspect going forward. But I thought it was funny. But I have to mention something that's in that vein,
right?
Because it did make me laugh. Is I kept seeing videos now of people pretending to be boomers, and saying, well, of course, we're entitled to the pensions, whatever else that we voted through, because don't you know, my dad fought in World War II. that point about the reason you did it was for the silent generation because holy crap did they go through hell is utterly evaporated now.
Yes.
And that really puts a big hole in the ship of trying to claim that these things are needed.
Yes. Well, should we let Gen X take their turn? Because they don't do too badly, actually. They don't do too badly. Now, these properties are cheaper, so that accounts for their strong showing. But what do they get? They get the remaining red ones, they get all the orange ones, they get all the pink ones, and they get 2 of the blue ones. Now, actually, if you ever play Monopoly properly, it's actually
that's what you want.
Yeah, you actually want the orange and the pink ones because the houses you get the marginal return on the houses is the highest. So I mean, Gen X, of course, they came on the tail end of that thing where they benefited from still being able to buy a house and still benefit from that sort of monetary, the Printer-go-Burr type stuff. So they still benefited from that.
But they don't have the diversity of the boomers, do they? You can see not much of their wealth is in the real estate. Just looking at your graph.
Oh yes, exactly. Yes. So yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah. So by far the real estate is the strongest element on that. They don't have that nicely well-rounded portfolio because it was essentially it was that driving it.
Whereas the silent generation don't have.
Well, should we have a look at the silent generation because like I say, they have been sort of roundly shit on. They are the Zoomers of their generational cycle. What do they get? They get 3 of the stations.
Don't forget the 4th station.
I mean, partly because some of them are dead. I mean, that doesn't help if you're accumulating wealth.
Sort of fudges the numbers a little bit.
It does.
But their makeup is interesting there because again, you're looking at real estate for them. Isn't that interesting? Most of their money's in what does it say? Their equities and mutual funds. Because if you held real estate for that long in those times, you wouldn't get the returns you have in modern times.
Yes.
The real estate becoming an asset you hold is a very modern thing and artificial.
Oh yeah, well it's isn't it? So it was basically just flat house prices for a long, long time. House prices were just flat, and it's only really
1860 or something.
Yes.
Yes. I must say I love the ONS. The ability for the British state to keep statistics is amazing, and you can go back to I think it's about 1810 for the UK to find out the affordability of housing, and you can see at about 1860 it reaches its lowest, and it's just flat for ages. And then
something happened.
And, yeah.
Well, I mean, the 2 big things is 1971. Of course, we came off the gold standard, and money became backed by, instead of gold, the promises of politicians.
Well, us hitching ourselves to the Americans as a vassal state, basically.
Yes, there is that. I mean, we're on a sort of worldwide dollar standard at that point. So the value of everything, the value of things that couldn't be printed, started to go up. So you're quite right. They do reasonably well on real estate, but otherwise are not strongly represented. Anyway, we got to let the millennials. They've got to be allowed to take their turn, haven't they? So
right. So they need a few properties to have their 10 cats in.
Yes. Well, they got 1 of the blue ones, 1 station, and 1 of the brown ones. Oh, and the electricity company. I'm not sure if I necessarily wanted to have a bright light bulb above Emma Watson's head. That might be that was unintentional, but it's
not impressive.
No, it's not the strongest showing, really, is it?
Also, lots of them aren't going to have anyone to pass said wealth onto.
Would have been nice if you did do this. Like, I know we don't have the time, but what you were saying about doing this at various points throughout history,
yes,
to get that proper representation, because obviously part of my brain is just thinking, well, they shouldn't have wealth; they're quite young. But I'd love to know how much worse off they are compared to a similar group at a similar time in their life.
Well, some of them are in their 40s now.
Yeah.
So when does millennials start?
Cutoff is 97. Some of the millennials.
No, I think it starts in 1980, doesn't it?
Yeah, so some of the millennials will be in their 40s.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, fair point.
45, wasn't it?
Well, that's not good, is it?
No. Exactly.
That is worrying. Yeah. Oh, well. Anyway, well, at least they've got the blue one and the brown one.
Right. So you're going to tell us why we should all just give up?
Well, no. I mean,
there's only 1 property left.
Well, we're
still stuck on go.
We got to let the Zoomers take their turn. And they're living in a house share in Old Kent Road.
Right.
I mean, technically, actually, they don't deserve that.
Well, that's the whitest Old Kent Road's looked in a while.
Yes. Well, and actually, honestly, they don't even deserve that. I had to round up I had to get very generous with the rounding up in order to just get them in there.
I don't know if you know a percentage. Was it like 40% rounding up or
something like that? Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, the only Zoomers who can actually afford a house are going to be the Ethot girls on OnlyFans,
or the ones whose boomer grandparents are dead.
Yes. So either way, you have to go through a significant family tragedy in order to get a house. Yes. So that's now. White pill on this. I mean, I would say to the Zoomers who are finding this a tad depressing.
Hello.
What basically happened is from the previous crisis up to 1971, so basically from the war to 1971, what you were seeing was that wages were rising strongly, completely in line with the rate of productivity increase. So as the economy was getting more productive, basically wages kept pace with that. In 1971, when we came off the gold standard, we went on to this funny money print-to-go-burr standards. Basically, wages and dividends ticked up, went like that. So returns on capital went up, and wages basically went flat. And if you adjust them for inflation, wages have not actually gone up since 1971.
And also productivity, from the analysis that I've read, has stagnated since the late 90s because, one, productivity goes in peaks and troughs because of certain revolutions. The digital revolution was the last time we probably had something. So we're expecting something from AI, but obviously it will dispossess people. And two, since 1997 and something happened,
yes,
we've mass imported a lot of people in who aren't nearly as productive as your native-born Brit. To
be fair, that productivity problem is uniquely British, so the Americans don't have that, which is I really should have told you about it. It's really funny. The UK government is announcing some new jobs on the UK government website. Astronaut. You want to be a British astronaut? You want to know what the starting pay is?
30 grand?
It's 40 grand. You got to be 39 years old minimum with a master's degree.
We don't have a space program. What are they using? Trebuchets?
We do send people up to the ISS every so often.
Oh, I see. Right.
Maybe we just be a British astronaut. There's 40 grand. And this got posted on Twitter, and underneath there are just hordes of Americans being like, what?
It's a bit. Oh no! What I was saying was because basically wages flatlined since 1971. So actually, even the boomers over their whole working lifespan did not get a real terms wage increase. And what's basically happened is that they were able to leverage off that money expansion, which is why they did well on houses. So actually, even houses the value of houses hasn't actually kept up with the rate of money printing. But it's okay because when you buy a house, you don't buy the whole house; you just put down a mortgage. So, like my parents, I think they bought a house for 30 grand, and they put down like 2 grand. So really, they bought the house for 2 grand. And now that house is worth almost $1 million.
Because the debt just gets inflated away.
Yeah. And the thing is, they didn't even pay off the mortgage. It was an interest-only mortgage. So basically they retired, and then it's like, oh no, we've still got the entire capital of the house to pay off. We've got to find 28 grand. Oh no, what are we going to do? Oh, we've got a lump sum from my pension. Oh, there we go. We'll just do that then. So basically they got a house for 2 grand.
Yeah, if we're lucky, have to pay 50 odd grand upfront mortgage for a wreck, and then much higher monthly payments because of the interest rates.
Yes. So
I wish I was drinking.
So my point in all of this is that wages have been ridiculously suppressed for 40 years at this point. And so my white pill to Zoomers is I think that is going to have to revert because the current situation is so ridiculously unsustainable.
But
the system will break. Well, it's either going to be that, or I think things are going to fall apart if it doesn't revert.
Well, I think it's going to fall apart. Slight counterpoint: isn't the mass number of migrants that are driving down wages and driving up demand for housing going to mean that the wages aren't going to revert?
Well, that could lead to things falling apart quite messily.
Right. Okay. So have we basically reached the position of where we're just like? Unfortunately, I love both my grandparents, so I don't want that. We're waiting for everyone else's grandparents to die.
Well, you say that. I don't think that's going to work either.
Okay,
because the boomers are going to be with us until basically the sort of if you do the demographic trends until the mid sort of 2040s. And if you look at where the money in the US and UK and other Western nations is being spent, I mean, it's basically all subsidising old age. So in the UK, it's the NHS and pensions, and then after that, it's other welfare. But the big items are NHS and pensions. And in the US, it's Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. They've also got quite a large military because boomers like blowing things up. So don't think that you're going to be bailed out by getting an inheritance one day, because basically, if you run those numbers, taxation has to significantly increase. There's no way out of it.
Right, so they're going to nickel your inheritance to retroactively pay for the boomer entitlement.
Yes. So I would say don't hold out any hope of getting any inheritance, because the state will find a way to get hold of that money for the simple reason that it either has to do that or tell boomers you're not getting your pensions that we promised you.
So what I'm hearing is I'll sleep under a bridge.
Well, no, I think long term it will revert, because it has to, because society is going to break if this carries on much longer. So, it is going to get worse, and then it's going to get worse again. But then eventually I think something will break and it will have to revert to something better, because this can't go on. This is not my final state of play for the board, because of course we're missing a couple of players, aren't we? Shall I add them?
Sure.
Right. So I've added on.
Right.
I've added on the boat people. they get all the community slots, because they're going in hotels and stuff like that.
Why are we all in jail and they're not?
Yes. Well, I'll come to that,
because we noticed all the boat people.
Yeah. So here we got 41,000 boat people have been added on. So the room's getting crowded.
That was just last year.
Yeah. It was just the 5 generational players here, but now we've got 41,000 boat people added on. So they get community squares all around the board. Right. Then of course we need to add on 1.2 million immigrants. Because the remarkable thing for me is how skilled the government has been at making the immigration debate all about the boat people and the illegal migration, while completely glossing over the other 1.2 million that they just let in.
Dead cat strategy.
Yes. So very clever. So they go on and they get the chance squares, because there is a chance, as with this particular chap, that he might stab you. So he gets that one. What else did I do? Oh, yes. We talked about this. So the tax squares, there's 2 tax squares. Well, that's obviously all going to go to the boomers, isn't it? Because like I said, the biggest...
You can only steal money from people who have got money. So who are you going to steal it from?
Yeah. Well, the Gen Xers and the Millennials have got a little bit.
Well, yeah. Well, what about the Tom, Dick and Abdul on the dinghies going in the tax square as well? Because
that's a good point.
I think they get community parking or whatever and get it all that way.
Well, I'll do the outside squares. So we've got the Gen Xers, the Millennials, and the Zoomers in jail because they refuse to be conscripted.
All right.
In the go to jail, we've got anyone who notices.
Right.
Yep. Sam, was it Sam?
Milea.
Said Milea. Right. So he goes in the go to jail thing. And free parking has been converted into a 15-minute city. So anyway, I thought that was an accurate representation of how this game is starting from here. Now, if I had done this as a Brokenomic episode, I then would have invited a couple of you in, and we would have actually played this game to find out who wins.
Alternative proposal: we play Monopoly on Lads Hour.
Yes, we could do. I want to do the moon landings in a Lads Hour, because Callum has ridiculous opinions about the moon landing. But
that's where I'll be moving to at this rate.
But anyway, so if you would like to get together some friends and play this game and then find out who wins and lets me know, please do, because that's basically where things are today. You can take your own opinion as to whether Zoomers are just being lazy or whether they are actually screwed after all. Okay, renters.
You appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters? You can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on that site, such as the Epoch series, this episode on Henry III. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.